Sorry, that was a fail.
Okay, I just hit the live button already. Just
Yeah, no worries. No worries. Let's do it.
Okay, we're live.
So do you want to do the intro or?
Yes, but I'm distracted by waiting for this to come up on my screen. Welcome, everybody, to the Backdrop Design UX meeting. And we, it's just Greg and I right now, and we're going to talk about some design and UX issues. I'm Tim Erickson, St. Paul Tim, usually in Deerwood, Minnesota, but today I am in Rogers, Minnesota, on my way to Deerwood. It's a 2-hour drive, and I got caught in the middle, so I stopped here. Have a Caribou coffee, and it's our product placement for the day, and to talk about UX issues with Greg. Greg, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, and I'm Greg. I'm joining from Greece, where I'm here supposedly temporarily for months now. Returning back to Melbourne sometime in December. Yeah, I've been trying to keep up with the issue queue. I've rebased a lot of my pull requests, tried to review as many issues where people needed reviews or testing. So I'm happy to be back in the game, I guess, because I was away for some time.
Good. Well, Greg and I, before turning on the recording, discussed if we should go ahead, but I think Greg, because he's been in the issue queue, has some issues that he can show us the status of how we can record them. And hopefully other folks will be able to watch this later and kind of see what some of the issues are that at least Greg thinks are need some help.
Right.
So, Greg, I can go ahead and just turn things over to you. And if you want to share your screen.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I need to be a bit careful because I'm using my work computer, so I need to be careful with what I'm sharing. Just bear with me.
Yeah.
Right. I think I'm sharing the right screen. Okay. Let me just make this a little bit bigger as well. Let's filter the issue queue by design because this is UX and design. So let's do that. All right, let's take this in order. I've updated some of the issues here. So this is one of the old ones. Installation requirements page looks broken. Basically, what happens is we have a table when this page may be skipped if everything's okay with your setup before you start installing Backdrop. But if not, then you're presented with a table that lists the items that we check. If the tests pass for the items, they're green. There's some informative items, and then if there's errors, they bubble up at the top, right? And because the screen is small, the problem was that everything was crammed up here to the right side, right? So we had it's a lengthy discussion. There were some proposals. One of them was this basically to make the text here wrap in a certain, because there's although there's no headings here, there's visually at least 3 columns: the one with the icons that denote the status, the one with the label of the item that we're checking, and the one with the details, right? So if we wrap certain items in a second line like this one, then there's a little bit more space. It's a bit more decent. The other proposal is to make the whole requirements page wider, which would fit without having to wrap anything, right? And the third proposal is to basically merge the 2 columns, the one that has only the titles, and then display the details for each item instead of a second column underneath its title. And there's a lengthy discussion. I decided to go with this one as a solution. Unfortunately, you cannot test this in the PR sandbox because it's past the installation, and this requires to initiate the installation without having a Backdrop installed already. That's the point, right? I have some notes somewhere where you can basically edit the system.install file and change just a conditional statement just to trigger that database error to to cause the installation to stop and pause at that step so that you can review, or you can go by the screenshots and provide some feedback. So the changes that I have implemented at some early points, like I've added some additional classes to the table just to distinguish which phase of the installation we're at. This doesn't do anything prominent like visually, but it helps in the future if we want to do these things. And Jen thumbed that up when she did the review a while ago. What I've done is I've changed the wording so there's this once you stop in this step, there was a message that was saying check the messages and try again. And I've changed that to resolve the problems, because it's basically problems, right? And also this text was sitting here at the bottom, whereas the most interesting things, the reason why we are pausing in this step is basically to resolve the problems. So I thought that it was best to move it up here and invite people to just fix these problems and then try again. It makes it for a better experience. So yeah, I think that this fixes the issue. If there's other suggestions, or either on this, or if there's preference to use some other solution, any feedback and code reviews, I'd be grateful. And I've rebased the PR as well. So I should also mention that it's been some time that we have, when it comes to the pull requests, for those that will be doing the reviews, we've implemented an additional check for spell checking. And you can tell this because this is the thing that fails usually. And I've noticed that I will bring this up during the dev meeting if we have a recording, but I've decided to, instead of solving the spell checking errors, because they're not being triggered by strings that are being changed by the pull request. So it's by spelling unknown words that are detected in the same files a few lines up or down, right? Pre-existing words. So I have a reopened, we already merged the commit to include certain words, but now more words keep coming up and I see a commonality. I think this PR demonstrates a list of words. Yes, it's all these words that I have addressed in another pull request. So once that separate pull request get merged, I'll rebase this and everything will be green. Now everything but this is green, right? So yeah, this is for those doing reviews in recent pull requests. We have this issue that I haven't worked on, and there's other issues linked from that, which you have participated in, Tim. So basically we have this place here. I think that this was what was before, and now we've introduced these links here when you edit the node, and we need to distinguish that these are separate links, I imagine, and there's other UI UX improvements that could be in place. So I am proposing to add actually, let me spin up we'll need it for the rest of the issues as well. I'll spin up a demo instance of Backdrop just so that we have that. It will only take 10 seconds. And I mentioned some other issues as relevant, this one specifically, that also is dealing with links and how we separate them or make them stand out more, or make them consistent with what we are using. And I proposed, I'm showing a screenshot there that I will show you now live, actually. I had this, well, everybody has preferences when it comes to separating things, and people were saying use semicolons or mid dots or commas or whatever. And I'm trying to be consistent in the UI. And I was remembering that we used to use pipes. I couldn't remember where, and then it came to me, and it's actually the views UI, right? So if I go in any view, you will see that wherever we need to separate links between each other, we just put a pipe. Here, here, here. So I suggested for both this issue here and for this to actually use pipes to separate things. So yeah, if you want to provide any feedback, or a pull request, it should be relatively simple to do those things. Yeah, since you participated in that, Tim, do you have any input, thoughts? You're muted, by the way, but you say
Yeah.
no. Okay.
Well, I agree. I think it looks good. It looks good.
All right, cool. Moving on. Oh, this is a good one.
Mhm.
And this actually will need, let me just bring up, let me move this out of the way. I'll bring up, right. And this calls, I'll quickly spin up a Drupal 8, sorry, 10, I guess 9 or 10 installation, and also a Drupal 7 installation, just to outline some, I think it's Drupal 7 if I'm doing it right. Yes, all right. I'll wait for those, they take a few seconds as well. Let's move here. All right, so this is Drupal 10. So when it comes to revisions, and that's what the issue is about, if I go to a content type and edit it and go to the revision settings, they're actually sitting in the publishing options for Drupal, right? And this is the option that has historically been there. So it hasn't changed. And if I go to Drupal 7, I go to structure, content types. I hope, let me just make this a little bit bigger, and then edit the same. So this has not changed, other than the fact that I guess the default, oh, actually, I'm not sure what the default is. Let's just try to add a content type, actually. Content types, add content type. Yeah, so this is off by default, to the ability to create a new revision, right? And let's do the same here, add content type. This is on by default, right? So this is something that has changed between Drupal 7 and Drupal 8. For us, if we go to structure, content types, and add a content type, let me just make this a little bit bigger as well. We have a few changes. So we moved the revision settings outside of the publishing settings. So because we have various other options here, and we have the revision settings here. And we have actually split this into two separate settings. One that says show an option to create revisions, and one that says whether revision should be created by default. Now, what this checkbox here does is, for example, if I go to content and try to add a page, it controls. Actually, no. Revisions are not showing up. This is a common mistake that I do. They're not showing up in new content. You need to go to existing content to see. So I'll choose a page and I'll edit it. And this basically controls whether this checkbox will be on by default each time that you edit content or not. So this is what this checkbox here does, right? This one controls whether people will be able to see this option or not, right? And the issue was raised. The issue was raised because this option here currently does not depend on this one. So usually, if this option would depend on this, we would have a states conditional here. So it only appears when I tick this checkbox. So you had the following options, right? You might have this, which means yes, always create, show this option to people and have that on by default. Or this, which means show the option, but do not have it on by default. This, which means do not take revisions at all. And then you would have this option here. And when people saw this set up here, they would expect that the option to create revisions will be hidden. However, a new revision would still be created without asking the user. And that was the expectation, but it doesn't work that way. Okay. So we have the option to either hide this if this is not ticked, because that's how it currently works. Or what people said is like, no, that we would expect if this is checked and this is not checked, to always create a revision without bothering the content editors with it. And what I've done, we have several iterations here. And what I have done is I filed a pull request a couple of days ago, or when, yeah. I'll fire up again, just the coding standards are failing. So let's open the PR sandbox. So this is another, while this is spinning up, this is one of the use cases where we have the Drupalisms or backdropisms. So people that are familiar with Backdrop or Drupal know how these things work. But if you are a person that is new to Drupal and Backdrop, it might be quite confusing. So what I have changed that to, with consensus from certain people that have chimed in early in this discussion, is that I have split up. First of all, I have moved. Sorry, or was it the right place? So there's this help text that says revisions allow content editors to view changes over time and revert them, right? So because this this description does not apply only to this checkbox, but to what is happening to the whole thing, what I've done is I moved it to be the help text for the entire field set. And I've also made this a link. So if you click that link, it takes you to the permissions page and it filters it to any relevant permissions only. So any permission that has to do with revisions. And this will only show up if the person that is viewing this page has the access to view the permissions page. If not, it will just be a simple word. It won't be a link, right? So the various options that we had of whether revisions will be created or not are now clearly indicated, so by the labels. So instead of having a checkbox and trying to figure out what combination of that will do what, it clearly says never create revisions, and then the summary as well is being updated and it says disabled for revisions, or show option to create revisions, which present this as optional. And then if I click that, optional and created by default, so it explains what it does. And then this is the new option. What people would expect to be happening if you have this checked is to always create a revision. And this is the new option. A new revision will be created automatically every time content is updated. The content editor cannot control this. So I'm looking, so these are the changes basically. And also when you are creating a new revision, a small change, sorry, again, the same mistake. You need to go in existing content. So if I edit this page here, what I've done again in the revision settings is I've added a description which is slightly different and it's targeted towards content editors, just to point out what the benefit is of doing this in case it's optional, right? Revisions allow retaining copies of previous versions of the content in case changes need to be reverted. In other words, and I'm looking for feedback on these things, just how to make it better. It's just that this is different to this text because this is targeted towards people that are building the content types, site builders, whereas this is targeted towards content editors. Sure. So I try to reword this to make it more useful. And also, I added states here to show the revision log only if this option is enabled. Okay. And the last thing that I want to show is if I create a new content type, revisions always on. So sorry, this is a, so I'll do this here with the functionality. So if I go to so I'll leave everything as default and I say always create revisions just to demonstrate the new feature, right? I'll actually don't. I should have just said, I'll just save it as it is. So I'll go to create a content as revisions always on. I'll save that. And then when I try to edit it again, it shows me here, well, did I configure it properly? Revisions always on, just bear with me.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's right, does it?
Yeah.
Nope, you
Yeah,
didn't get the
yeah,
right
I
one.
didn't. I
There you
didn't
go.
save it. I didn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just save the content. So it's a good to see what you call it before after, right?
Yep.
So this is what would have shown if revisions were optional.
Yep.
But if I refresh that now, oh, yeah, it doesn't work as expected. Just let me see if maybe it's not being saved properly. Yes. So for some reason it's not reverting. Anyway, I had that working properly. I'll have to have another look. So what would happen here is that this option would not be created, would not be shown. The checkbox will be hidden, but you would still be able to see the revision log to allow you to add comment when you were creating. I'll see what I messed up.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, I'll see what I've so despite the fact that you would not have an option to control whether a revision will be created or not, this tab will still be shown to allow you to add a log message. So, okay, I'll switch that to needs work.
Yeah. Can I talk to you about the revisions in general?
Sure.
Your PR makes sense. One of the things that I've noticed in my own behavior is that whether or not the option to do revisions is turned on or not, I just forget about that as an option. And it's a little bit buried in those tabs. And I was thinking, I don't know, it feels to me like if you're giving the editor the option to create revisions, but they don't know that that option exists, they're never going to discover it. Right? So
Yeah.
if I manage a set of editors and I turn that on, and if I haven't like told editors you should create revisions, or that option is there for you, please use it, they're never going to think to use it. It's because it's kind of buried, and I'm just wondering if we don't hide it too much, the revisions.
Yeah.
And this could be a follow-up issue. This maybe isn't addressed it shouldn't be addressed in your PR, but I've thought about this before. Go ahead.
Yeah. So if we make this the default, which seems to be,
Right.
that wasn't the case in Drupal 7, but it is in Drupal 8, and it does make sense, right? It's the safe thing to do. So if we make sure that we make this the default option to show the option to create revisions and to always create a revision by default, then people won't have, like, even if they skip it, it's still the safest thing happens. A revision is created. Having said that, and I did bring this up, and this can be a follow-up issue. We did come, like in my previous role, we did come across an issue where 2 or 3 specific nodes in one site were being programmatically updated. So they had a script that would run, pull information from a third party, and update the node. And because they had this option here to create a new revision always, it would create hundreds of thousands of revisions over time, which actually brought the whole site down when they were trying to access that page, because it was trying to load the revisions or what have you.
Right.
And I did mention that in the issue here, and and then Martin chimed in and said maybe it's a follow-up, maybe it doesn't feel like it's out of scope for this specific issue. But we should either, like, there's contrib modules out there that either you can tell them limit all the revisions up to 100, so keep up to 100 revisions, or keep revisions up to a month behind or a year behind, and anything older deleted. And these options safeguard you from that thing.
Right.
However, adding any such option in core seems a bit too much for me. Maybe we can set a default that can be overwritten via settings, PHP, and like set it to a sensible default, like keep 100 revisions, right?
Sure.
And then rotate it. And then people can customize it via settings, or we can allow contrib to come in and fill that space. I thought that this is relevant. I mentioned it here, but maybe out of scope.
Sure.
The other thing that I wanted to mention about this issue, and I'll make a note here that the reason why I changed it to needs work is to just figure out what went wrong with the with this not being able to be saved properly. The other thing is that I'm not sure if this is a bug, a UX bug, or a feature, a new feature. It is listed as a bug because the initial title of the issue is like create new revision doesn't enable revisions. So basically, everyone agreed that when I saw the options, this is what I was expecting, and that's not happening. So that qualifies as a bug. But this specific thing which confused people, this was the thing that they were referring to, is actually something that is not provided in core.
Sure.
So if we are adding it, which is basically this option here, the always create revisions, then this is a new feature. So we need to decide if this is a new feature or a bug fix, and set the milestone accordingly. And if it's a new feature, treat it as that.
My gut leans to treat it as a new feature, but I don't feel strongly.
And noting that also the summary, this text here that changes according to what was not showing the proper, like it was confusing as well, and it wasn't updated. And we did have a separate issue for it, but I closed it because the changes were very minimal, and they would depend on what we set up, we end up with here. So it didn't make sense for me to just fix those settings and then go and change them again in another PR. We would have conflicting PRs. So I closed that issue and said, let's deal with that, with everything here. It will be addressed here. And what I mean is by that, it's a very small change in the JS file. So it's just this code change here, basically updating the labels of the summaries. So it's not such a big change, but it needs to be reflecting whatever is the decision, whatever we end up with here. All right. So I'll add a summary at some point. Yep. All right. And I'll remember to do that later. Let's not waste time here. Move on to other issues. So that was this one. Sorry, did you have any other comments?
Well, the point I made about making it more prominent, you kind of switched to, I think, a different issue. Like you get my point was if you say show option to create if you say show option to create revisions and you don't turn it on by default, I guess that sort of solves it, doesn't it?
Yes.
Maybe that was your point.
Yeah, because then this will happen. So when people come to create a new version, even if they skip it, a new version is being created. The only thing that doesn't happen is that they do not add
they don't get a log message,
a message to say what they've changed. But we have this in core, as far as I know, and you can compare revisions and see what has changed in between. So yeah, this is more like a best practice or being a good player, same as adding alt text for images that people should be doing.
I don't know that this needs to be in core, but I'd like the ability to maybe pull that out of the tabs. And this be a relatively easy contrib module to make, so that the revision thing came out of, if you wanted to, you could pull the revisions out of the tabs and just make them more prominent to the editor.
Yeah, and this is what happens in the UI is considerably different, but in Drupal 10, if you try to add a page, it's always visible. It's always there because this is always expanded. It's at the top of the page. And I think there was an iteration where this was here. Okay. So what they've done in Drupal, they also exposed, because this UI change happened in iterations. And we do have an issue for implementing this. Yeah.
I like this, at least as an option, having it visible. Obviously, we treat our tabs differently. What do you think? Should that be another core issue, or is that just something we could do in contrib?
Yeah, it would need to be a different. It's a bit because what it would do is it would pull out all this thing in case it was optional as a checkbox here outside the series of tabs, and it needs to be a decision with that. But it could be a contrib module, which basically would not re-implement everything. It's just they would pull this out of the vertical tabs and expose it here. It would still be the same form elements, I imagine. So it wouldn't require a lot of code. There is an old issue where we are looking to expose these options in the form of updating the the labels of the buttons here. So instead of saying save, it would depending on the option that you have, it would say publish, create new draft, schedule for later. So instead of having these things as radio buttons here, we would have them as options, as action here. So maybe while we're working on that issue, we can think how that would work as well.
Sounds good. We can move on.
Yep. All right. Moving on. So we were here. That we mentioned that, which is the same as this, the styling of node links. It's this issue here. All right, this is another good one. UX URL alias pattern page cleanup. So this started, it was quite a few years ago, and it has evolved. Like we decided on a few things, like what do we do when we have multiple, and let me just close a few tabs here and we'll reopen. So we had a few iterations and a few ideas because this page can get overwhelming and it has different elements here. And how it works is we have, let me just bring up the sandbox for this PR. And also I think, yeah, so let's go and see what the current situation. So if you go under configuration and then URL handling, URL aliases and patterns, URL alias patterns, you see this interface, which is what happens out of the box, right? So we have three main categories. So this simplifies things. And these are expanded the field sets by default. You have URL patterns, alias patterns for user accounts, taxonomy terms, and content, right? The difference between this and that bug folder mentioned is that there's always a single thing here, right? You may have multiple, there's only one vocabulary at this point, but if I keep adding vocabularies to the side, that you will have more and more items. And the top item always is the default, which basically says that this applies to all the other things if you leave them blank. And with content types, it's a bit more necessary to specify individual, more specific patterns for its content type, whereas for vocabularies, it depends on the side. Now, if I'm hesitant to open the page for backdropcms.org, our main site, because it might reveal information because I'm logged in as an administrator. But you can imagine, like we have a dozen or more, maybe a couple of dozen of content types and multiple vocabularies. So this starts becoming overwhelming, right? And what we have been doing with the pull request for that issue is we had some back and forth with Robert Bagfolder, but since he's mainly I've addressed feedback that was earlier, but we didn't have any recent feedback from others. Let me just log into the site. So this is what this has evolved to now with this pull request, right? So a few things that have changed, right? I have, instead of using field sets for let me just put these side by side. Instead of using field sets for the entire pattern thing, I'm only using field sets for the variations, the specific things besides the default, what the default would be. So this is what this is. So this is as I say, content URL patterns, taxonomy, and user account. And after feedback from Robert, I'm using singular here when there's only one field. This says patterns, whereas this says pattern, right? And I'm hiding the label for this field because it would basically be duplicating the label of this one. So we save a little bit. I'm visually hiding, I should say. I'm not removing it. It's still there for accessibility reasons, but it's reducing the clutter here, right? Also, what we have done is we broke up this bit of information and we reworded it as help text. We specify that this is a default pattern, and then you can customize it. I've added little summaries here to say that basically nothing has been customized here. It's empty, so you can customize it. And this actually updates live. So if I remove that, it says,
nice.
yeah. Oh, sorry, I saved it. Sorry, I didn't mean to save it. Thank God that it reverted the save, the change. But yes, so this updates and it tells you like how many different content types you have and how many have different customizations. But for very simple websites, and this was my thinking, was that for very simple sites that have only a few vocabularies or just the basic ones that come out of the box and very few content types, they will never need to customize this beyond the first time, right? So we expose the default which apply to everything else, and then you keep the others hidden. Now, also when the form loads, if things are customized, this is expanded by default. And if this is the there's no customizations here, then it's collapsed, so it's out of your web. But let me see if that works, because I didn't see it working as expected. Now just let me do another thing. Yep, let's do this. It's not working as expected. I need to look at that as well. But the point was, yeah, I'm looking feedback for that as well. So if there's no customization here, maybe this should be collapsed by default to reduce the clutter in the form, or maybe everything should be collapsed and only expanded as you need to edit things. So yeah, feedback welcome on any of these changes or the wording, and that's that issue. I'll keep this on the side because we.
Did you notice that that last issue is actually RTBC bug folder? I mean, it's not too late for people to give feedback, but Robert went ahead and marked that RTBC.
Yeah, sure. Just maybe to draw the attention of other people, but not too late. Not too late for others. And I'm outlining the differences with screenshots as well to give a summary for those that haven't watched the this recording.
It did. There it is. So that has been marked RTBC. I like it. I think it looks good. I'll maybe try and look at it a little closer later, but.
Yeah, and maybe kick the tires a bit because some of the functionality might not be working as expected. Or yeah, sure. Maybe what I said, the intention was to collapse this by default, but maybe I didn't put it in the pull request. And if you like that idea and you think it makes streamlines it, just add a comment and say, yes, I think that this should happen. Okay, so we have another 10 minutes. Let's see what else. All right, so this is one of my favorites, also RTBC. Just to quickly mention it, if people want to try it, is basically replacing the more or less buttons. And this is also RTBC by Robert. We could use some eyes in the code or CSS changes from others, but I guess. Yeah, and we also tested various things. This is the screenshot that I recently took with Gin theme, and a bug folder tested it on Basis and 7 as well when they're used as an admin theme. Because this is not only an admin feature, like people might be able to use that in user facing, like visitors interfaces, front end themes, in other words. There's an update here. Let's see. Yep, this is the system. This is an old one, right? So we have this page here where the manual updates, which is usually Backdrop Core, are split in this table and separated from the rest of the updates for modules and themes and layout templates. And what I'm proposing is to merge that into a single table. If manual updates are required, then we hide the checkbox for the backdrop. We don't provide it as an option, and then we provide a information that says why this has been disabled. So in other words, just consolidate the UI that has two different tables that do the same thing to a single table with whatever cannot be updated having a disabled checkbox. So yep. Let's see what was, this was from Ismaze saying that they like that suggestion. So anyways, this currently needs code review and testing. Next, similar to the previous, just consolidating tables in various UIs. I'm not sure if people can see this. So this is the suggestion, right? To maybe take out the default layouts, which basically we have a title here that makes it seem as part of this table. And maybe the proposal here is to just stick it out as a separate thing and use the this as a help text, right?
Sure.
Yep, that's it. Create a separate section for the default layouts. Again, code review and feedback.
Yeah, looks good.
Yeah, this is older. I don't know how long since it has been touched, since June. Again, needs a code review. And what this has to do is the account settings, improve labels, and help text in the various options for registration and cancellation. So I guess this becomes this. So there's help text to explain what things do. Yeah, I haven't touched this in a while, but this is how things look. And I think that I'm taking advantage in recent versions of the pull request of the attribute that we added to things to indent them. So previously this was at the same level as these radio buttons, but because it's dependent on the options, it's being pulled slightly inwards there. I had another issue. Maybe it's not tagged with design, and that's why it's not showing up. So we have that. Sorry, I'll go one step back. So we saw that issue about installation requirements page looks broken, right? Where I went with this option here, right? And there's a similar issue. Bear with me as I'm trying to find it in the last 5 minutes that we have. This one, I think. No, it's not.
Is it maybe just a UX issue and not a design?
Yes, it could be. So basically, there's an issue, but that I can't remember now. That this is the installation form. We have one about the updates. Maybe I'll search by it now.
System updates form. Nope, that's a design issue.
Sorry, just bear with me. Sorry, I'm jumping. We've seen that. I'm sure that I have linked it. So there it is. Nope. There it is. So this is an issue where we are discussing about how, like, when you start performing database updates, if certain updates cannot be performed, it was like it shows you a warning and no pending updates. So this is like confusing what happens here. After the pull request, it evolved to something like this. We had various iterations like this one, or including. I'll go to the most recent ones because that's where most of the feedback is. So this is one of the most recent ones, and then Laren suggested that this just having warnings here about various things is maybe too much. And well, while discussing that, I think that it's not ready for a pull request. This is something that I'm meant to start working on. I thought that maybe we can use the same pattern as the previous issue that we're discussing. Bear with me. Sorry if this is being confusing. I'm just maybe my brain stopped functioning. Yeah. Okay. So I'm basically suggesting to use the same pattern, a table that shows checkboxes and errors as icons, that's not a good. This is the problematic thing. I'll show this, which is the good thing, the nice thing. So basically, I'm saying convert all this into a table that basically lists all the updates, and maybe these ones that are updates that will happen that are not problematic, we show them as gray because it's just information, and the ones that are problematic, because when you see this here, your eye does not fall on these things that actually are the problems, right? So maybe we can call out these as being problems by indicating them with not with an error, but with a warning sign here. So this is what I was planning to work on, but I didn't have time because I was working on all these other issues. Anyway, but over the weekend I'll try to file a pull request for this as well and screenshots. But this is where I was thinking to head, so that we have consistency across the UIs as well, and people don't see different things.
Sure. Good work,
Right.
Greg. I think there's some good stuff here that's, almost ready to go.
Yep.
Let's
Yep.
get these changes in there.
Most of them are like 90% there, or even more, like 99% there. We just need people to review, give it a thumbs up, or make other suggestions for either the wording or give better ideas or things that maybe we didn't take into consideration.
Very good.
All right. And this turned out to be a very pleasurable meeting after all. We got to,
hopefully
showcase,
some people, hopefully some people will watch this and
provide feedback. Yes.
and provide feedback. Yep. Why don't you quit sharing?
Yeah, just let me find the right button. Yep. All right, cool.
Okay, and then let's go ahead. We'll wrap up this meeting and we'll decide what to do about our Deb meeting.
All right. Thanks everyone for watching.